Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Hopefully, everyone is excited as I am about some of the capabilities in the product. I'm, I guess, the lucky one being able to talk about SAS Viya Copilot, having worked on the actual product for a bit more than over a year. We got some really good feedback, and I'm hopefully able to share some of the details here with you. I have a couple of slides in the beginning just to sort of set the scene. The session itself will majorly be a live demo. So stay with me. It might go well, it might not. We're using large language models, and so you never really know what's happening, but it should be a fun session. SAS Viya Copilot is our conversational AI assistant, built right into the product, right into Viya platform itself. It's designed to make working with data and AI easier. It's as simple as that. It will make it not just easier to use the product, it will be more accessible to everyone. It lowers the barrier essentially for even new users and getting productivity out of the product. Whether you're a coder or no coder, you can simply ask Viya Copilot any questions you like, whether you want to explore your data, whether you want to refine models, generate insights, create visualizations. It's everything you can do with Viya Copilot. It's all about removing frictions and accelerating time to value. Of course, everything happens securely within our environment. We have an oversight and then transparent AI. We actually have an interface, which I can show you as well. I'm not sure how much time we have today, but whatever I'm not covering today in this session, you're more than welcome to come over to the Viya Copilot booth, and we can give you like a deep dive. Let's have a closer look to SAS Viya Copilot and how it enhances SAS Visual Analytics. With Viya Copilot, users can go beyond just exploring data. They can simply interact with it. So imagine asking questions in natural language and instantly getting dashboards, visuals, explanations, even predictive models, and some of these advanced analytics visuals we have in the product. Some are not easy to understand. Not everyone is a data scientist, so having like a large language model behind gives you just this little competitive advantage. Copilot can uncover key trends or explain insights, and it can build interactive reports, and that's something I will show you in just a minute, interactively and in real time. In short, Viya Copilot makes VA smarter, faster, and more intuitive, and empowering every user to any skill level, being able to look at your data, getting your insights, and assist you with the data storytelling. In a bit more detail of how we actually integrating with SAS Viya Copilot in the product itself. In Visual Analytics itself, we actually have two distinct key capabilities, if you like. One is the actual conversational chat, the one you're used to, the one you've probably seen on various demos, which is essentially the chat interface on the right-hand side. But in addition, we also have a context-aware experience. The latter is something which brings AI assistance directly into the user's workflow. So it understands of what you are doing, it provides an intelligent, in-context actions, and it connects you through data manipulation, analysis, or visualizations without breaking the flow. And I will show you an example in just a minute on what it means. And then obviously the conversational chat, as you probably have seen a few times, it adds the natural language layer to the product. Users can simply ask questions, request visual changes, extract insights, ask Copilot to explain content, and things like that. We also have an interface for governance and auditability, which I'm not sure I'll have enough time today to show, but essentially you can look beyond the curtain. You can see what the message traces are, what the tool calls are, how many tokens you even use behind the scenes, how expensive was it to create a visual. So those are all key aspects when you actually look into the details behind the scenes. But let's dive into the demo itself. Just bring this one up. A little larger. So this demo, I thought what would be a good one to actually demonstrate the capability itself. While I could enter like a number of simple prompts to show you what it can do, I thought I'd have like a mini storyline. So essentially what I'm trying to do is simulate of a typically workflow somebody would go through in an organization. So I will show you how you can explore insurance claim data in my example here using the conversational chat interface. So I will essentially ask the large language model in VA, instead of navigating through menus or property screens and that type of thing. So let's start by opening our chat pane. The chat pane here is on the top right corner. There's a little icon here which opens the chat pane. This one has a few sample prompts you can use to get started. You can obviously start typing something in here now. What I do for the demo purposes, and so you don't actually see me typing all the time, which is rather boring, and I probably will make typos in there. If I right-click on this menu here, we have a so-called prompt catalog, which is actually quite handy. I showed it to a few customers. While it's mostly internally at this point, I feel like there's a lot of benefits even for customers to save prompts which are maybe used multiple times in the organization. So I have a section here for save prompts, and I'm simply using one here. All it does, it puts it in the chat pane on the bottom right corner. So I will start typing something like, I want to analyze historical claims. So search and open for suitable data source. So what's happening behind the scenes here is quite fascinating. The Copilot is trying to interpreting my natural language request and recognizing, hopefully, an actionable item. So it will look through the tool registry we have behind the scenes to hopefully find a tool where it can firstly discover actually available data sources in the first place, and then also hopefully open the table for me. See what it actually wrote. I can extract, start searching. No match. All right, let's try this again. All right, search for the table and open. I'll try again. I might have to restart here if it doesn't work. Let's see how it does. The idea is that it uses some of these tools we have in the product itself to actually find tables and open it automatically. Let's see whether it works. Thank you, Wednesday. All right, let's try this again here. I think it expired. I had it open for a little while, so let me just try restarting this one more time. Using, for the search, we're actually using information catalog behind the scenes. So the idea is when you register tables in your environment, it's supposed to look into the actual registry of tables we have. And that needs to find the metadata behind the scenes, and it needs to essentially try to extract all relevant information. I wasn't very specific in my prompt, but it usually should find it here. Use claim history in public. So it looks through there, found a couple of different tables, and hopefully it goes ahead and opens it now. It doesn't want to open it today. What is it? All right, let's open this manually. I don't know exactly why it's preventing me of opening it, but the table's not available, but just to turn on. The next one I will do is I want to do something a little bit more complex. So, so instead of me manually dragging an item on the screen, I actually want to ask Copilot to help me with designing these reports. So I want to ask something like, I'm planning to build a dashboard analyzing claim. Can you add a visual to explain the characteristics? So first, in this user flow, I want to understand what the different data items are about, and I want to create a visual to explain some of these items. So what's happening behind the scenes, there's a so-called function chaining. So it looks in a tool registry to find suitable tools it can use to extract the item. And decided to put this one in here, so I might just add it here to the screen. So in this particular example, it created a visual here for a type of car. So it helps me essentially to understand some of the characteristics. I can use this one to understand, what the distribution is like. It's an interactive visualization, and usually a great start to start your discovery journey. So let's dive deeper into the claim analysis and add more visuals. Let's use another prompt in here. This one, I want to use predictive analytics. So this particular example, I want to forecast the claim amount dependent on the underlying factor for exposure over time, which is one of the items in my data source. And I'm asking it essentially to pick the right visual here out of the visualization catalog. It adds the visual automatically here on the screen itself. So you didn't have to find the visual. You didn't have to configure this particular visualization. And it adds it right straight into the report, which is very nice. The data item exposure is not exactly something I would like to use. So in my particular example, exposure doesn't seem to be very self-explanatory. So I wonder whether the Copilot can actually help me with the better description for this item. So I have a second prompt in here, which is called rename the exposure data item in my data source to something more descriptive. So now it depends on what the Copilot might think of what this item is. It actually has context around these items. Obviously, it knows what visualization we have on the screen. It knows what the report is all about, and should be able to rename it. Yes, go ahead and rename. Sometimes it's confirming whether it actually should do a particular task or not, but usually this works. So my idea is here that this item should be renamed. And it now does this particular task, so it's now called policy exposure. And you can see how quickly this report improves in report readability. So let's go a little further. So what happens if we actually just want to discuss a particular visual? So I'm not necessarily, let me collapse this one here a little. What if I don't exactly sure what visualization I want to have? Maybe I just have a rough idea and want to discuss the visualization with the chat, with the large language model first. I can ask something like preview a particular visual. So at this point, it should also generate a visual, but in the chat pane itself. The speed, by the way, of how long this sometimes takes really depends on the network sometimes. Obviously, there's a busy conference here, and it might take a little longer sometimes to finish. So it decided to create this visual. It has the explanation around it. So it gives me essentially a histogram showing you the distribution by age. What I just realized, I actually have 2 age variables in there. So you can make adjustments. You can say something like, I'm sorry, what I really meant was vehicle age, because what I really want to analyze is sort of the claims related to specific vehicles in the organization. So the idea is that you're sort of discussing this particular visualization or the analysis with the Copilot first before you're committing adding this visualization to your report itself. So at this point, it should take into account the chat history. So it should realize, okay, what it has done in the last step, and should adjust the visualization and reflecting it with vehicle age this time. And you get the idea. You can obviously apply a filter, ranks. You can ask it to do more display rules, having things highlighted. But ultimately, at some point, you're saying, this is exactly what I want. And then you either ask it or you actually drag and drop it out of the chat history straight into your report. Yeah? Both options are valid options there. So the next step in my journey of exploring the data, let me add one more visual. Let's say I'm also interested in age groups. What I really, before I'm adding the visual, I'm actually interested in more details about this particular histogram. The idea here being is, can Copilot actually understand the data? So can it help you getting insights? Obviously, I can hover over this particular one, and I can see, the between 6 and 7 year old cars seem to have the highest claim. But I wonder whether Copilot is actually able to understand this. And you can see it actually responded saying, between 6 and 7, seem to have frequency. So it has access to the data and can sort of guide you along the way. So one of the things you could do now as part of the workflow would be you might only want to forecast these particular group of vehicles. So we could say something like, can you, oops, did I click on it? Can you filter the forecasting visual using that exact age group? Typically, what you had to do prior to Copilot, you have to go in here and create new filter. You have to come up with the expression, have to decide on how you really want to filter something. But there's also an expression build engine or like a tool in the toolbox which is able to essentially do exactly this. So when the Copilot is finished, you should get a new filter item in here. And you can see it has various options here sometimes. Sometimes it's very creative. This one is probably more on the detail side, I would say. We also have functions like between and other more efficient functions to filter the data. But you can see I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to create the filter. It's literally just doing this for me. And let's dive into the last visual here. I wonder how we do claim amount in relation to income. It would be asking the Copilot here to add an additional visual, a scatter plot. And I'm also telling it here in this particular one to put it right of the forecast visual. So when you go more into the design aspect of your graph, of your report, you sometimes want to tell the system exactly what you're after. And it should take it into account. If you don't know what you want, you can also leave it all to the Copilot to decide. It is actually very creative sometimes of how it creates these visuals and positions these visuals. But you have full control there as well. So I created this particular visualization. It took into account even the second part of my request, which essentially make sure you actually color these scatter data points by another variable. So now I can easily see how the distribution is, like homemakers versus professional. People with higher income, do they tend to use more or less of these claims? So you get the idea. So you're slowly building up your reports structure and your content, given your particular use case. But eventually you want to go into the actual design or your finishing touches. So this is one of the last prompts is here saying, enhance this particular dashboard. Make it more like a dashboard-looking feel. Not an infographic just yet, but add a header, add a footer, make it more like a dashboard look and feel. Prior to this one, you actually had to add the text visual manually to the screen. You have to come up with your own text, but the Copilot should have enough context now for it to be able to understand of what I'm actually doing here right now. So it should realize that it's all about claim analysis, gathering insights. But it's a live demo, so I don't know exactly what it will come up with. But essentially going through the tool calls, so you can see it's already added the actual text object. Next step is populating it with text. It decided to use claim risk and exposure dashboard. Probably not bad. Every time I'm running it, I get slightly something different. And now it's working on the footer here. It's usually a little quicker here, but as I said, the network is a little slow here. Just wait for the footer to finish, and there you go. We have the actual footer text, so a lot of content. And as I said, it depends on I talked to a few people on the booth. It all depends on your prompt engineering skills, really, and how creative the system will be, and how you could obviously tell it to use shorter, longer version, use a particular tone, or something related to your organization. It's literally just a large language model behind the scenes. This one here is optional, a bit like what you might have seen on the opening session there. Obviously, once you finish, you like the layout, you almost feel like it's ready to go to send off to your management. You could do some last minute changes to themes, to colors. That's when the Copilot really shines because, depending on your creativity, you might not be able to pick the right color. You just struggle. You don't exactly know which works best. But you get the idea. You literally can type in anything you want in this system. So we have a few minutes left, I believe. So let's do this last one. So this one is the chat interface. As I said, I had to run relatively quickly over these steps. Let me open one other report. I want to show you at least one example of the in-context feature, so you get the idea of what is the alternative to using chat. So this one is a basic report I built yesterday. I actually used Copilot for that one, but you get the idea. So the The requirement I have right now is, for example, I have this beautiful scatter plot, very busy scatter plot here on the right-hand side, which shows you the vehicle mileage per gallon and, compared to the engine horsepower. So, is the economy, does it get worse or, better as you have more horsepower? It shouldn't be too surprising on what the graph looks like. But let's say I want to bring in, additional information like the vehicle make, and I want to color these ones. As you can see on the left-hand side, these are 55, I didn't even do it. These are 55 different unique vehicle makes. So quite a lot of detailed values. For me to order colorize them, I really need a higher level grouping for these ones. So what I usually want to do at this point is to create a custom category, which means I go into this dialog, I go into the edit one to create the first group. I pick different cars, let's say Audi, BMW, say they're German or they're European, that type of thing. And I do this with every single one, describe what the group is like, and all that stuff. But you feel like a large language model should be able to do this just as good, right? So we have two options in here. We can just simply press the Generate Value Groups button here. And this particular button, this Generate button, you find all over the place in the product. What's there is essentially there's an agent behind the scenes. There's a system prompt designed to do the grouping, the higher level categorization. I didn't specify anything, so I don't know exactly what it feels like it wants to group. So in this example, it decided, OK, it wants to split them into premium and mass market type thing, which is probably not a bad idea as a first level. If you don't like what the Copilot done, let's say you want to have a totally different types of grouping, there's a little gear icon here, and you can essentially provide a mini prompt, like a snippet. You can type something in here, or you can even use the little suggestion button here. Ask the model, give me a few ideas. What else could I group it for? And you can see you can pick one of these 5. Let's say I want to use the one by country. You can go in here and edit, by the way. So you say no more than 3 groups, use a particular spelling, whatever you want. So if you press again, it will take the ideas. It takes this mini prompt into account when it wants to grouping. And hopefully we come up with groups like Germany, Japan, that type of thing. And you can see, 55 is not too bad. You probably could do it even manually, but think about it in like hundreds of values or 200s. It literally takes you like two clicks to get to exact grouping mechanism. Just to finish here. There's one more thing I want to show you when it's finished. All right, let's see. Yep, did a good job. Let me check. I'm originally from Germany, so I usually check whether it actually picked the right cars. So let's say Audi, BMW, that looks correct. I should also mention you see these little sparkling icons in here. They actually indicate that this value assignment was done by the actual large language model itself. Yeah, so if you feel like, oh, BMW is really something other Europe category, you can drag it over if you want. So you can fix it, you can tune it, and it loses a little sparkling icon, but that's all it's still. If you're interested of why it did what it did, there's a little explain button, so you can actually have a look about the reasoning, so why it decided to put the one in the other. This one is relatively obvious. It looked at the car manufacturers, where the origin is. Last but not least, you might use the little suggestion here for the name. It's currently called custom category, which isn't really what we want. So let's say vehicle manufacturer regions, press on OK, and we got a new one in here now. Deselect. So if we want to color this now, we should have a few less colors to deal with. Obviously, I could have done only 3 or 4 or something, but you get the idea. So now you click on Germany or on other cars, and you see how the distribution is like. So very efficient, regardless of the context, regardless of the actual type of the item. Works for measures as well as for categorical items, and it's very powerful. And we have a few more. So if you want to discover some more of these GenAI icons, come over to the booth and I can explain a few more things.
All right, thank you, Falco. I think we have a couple minutes for some questions, if there's any questions from the audience.
I saw on one of the VA objects you created, it was geomapping. So if you're building a report for the first time as a new SaaS user, you have to download GeoMap content before you can use it sometimes. So if you ask Copilot to do geomapping, will it download that content for you and then use it?
It depends. I mean, it's a good example. Geomaps are actually quite complex. There's multiple steps for you to create a geomap. It usually starts off with identifying the actual geo item in the first place. It might be a zip code, a state, or some other representation. Then you have to actually define of what is the geocoding like. Like, do you have latitude, longitude in the data? Do we use internal lookup data? And the Copilot actually can do this almost automatically. I say almost because there are certain exceptions. But if you say you want to visualize, let's say, state by your claim amount or something like that, it will literally figure out, okay, you need state. State is not yet a geo item. It will go through the process of discovering what state is like. It could be the abbreviated version of state. It could be the long one. And then depending on what it is literally discovering the first 10 rows, tries to discover what it's like, and then determines what the geo configuration is like. So it configures the geo item for you and literally puts up the geo map, for you on the map, on the report. What it can't do is downloading additional content yet. So we have this thing called custom polygons, custom data, custom provider, but it's actually on the list to be implemented because that is a huge time saver, I feel, if Copilot can do that.
And one other quick one was, you mentioned interactive reports, and it's the object linking is kind of what you're showing, right? But can it do DDC objects?
Data-driven content?
Yeah.
Well, it can generate the actual object itself, but what it can't really, how should I say, because it doesn't know what the data DDC object is all about, so it doesn't have the insight. It can do the linkage, so it can have a bar chart, interactive filter this particular DDC, but it won't be able to configure the DDC itself. That is something which is the custom object about, but yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Are you able to have it reference other existing dashboards to then be able to format it in a similar style?
Yes. Yes. What I actually shown, not in today or something, what is really actually nice, you see on the bottom right corner here, this little, attachment icon. We're actually using it sometimes when you have, and we had an organization coming into our booth. They have their almost like report template standards. They have their particular design, their particular requirements, what the header, what the footer should look like, what colors to use. So all these internal standards, corporate standards, style standards. And what you can do is essentially you either upload these standards as part of your prompt. You say, here's a CSV for, here's a text file with these instructions. Or what also works, you can actually take a screenshot. Like you have, let's say you have already a report which is exactly what you want. It might not use claim data, it might use something else, but you can attach it to your conversation and say, Copilot, look at the attached report, that's what I want. Create me exactly the same report using the data I just opened here, or something like that. So it is very efficient across multiple reports if you wanted to.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks for attending. Thank you, Falco.
Thank you.